I wanted to talk about some recent trends in California legislative drafting. I obviously love the topic, and this is my fifth year of co-teaching a course on legislative drafting at UC Davis King Hall School of Law. I also try to take a look at the thousands of bills that get introduced and ultimately make their way to the governor's desk. And I wanted to highlight three recent trends I've seen in California bills that seem to be becoming more and more common or popular to do. The first is including legislative findings and declarations, often followed by one or more statements of legislative intent. The second is including a severability clause in bills. And the third is making a bill contingent upon a future budget appropriation. So, in looking at the first three of these, more legislative findings and declarations, I've seen more and more bills over the last few years, including findings and declarations, again, as well as often statements of legislative intent. Previously, bills often put findings and declarations in one bill section and then intent statements in a second bill section. The more common approach in the last 2 years or so has been to make the findings and declarations as well as the intent statements in one single bill section, more often uncodified than codified. I counted about 280 bills containing these types of clauses in the 2025 session. And there are certainly a number of those examples again of those 280 bills. On severability clauses, again, I'm seeing more and more bills including these, regardless of whether the bill is, say, constitutionally suspect. It's a canon of statutory construction or statutory interpretation, one of the principles in California, that statutes are presumed to have sections that can be severed while the remaining valid ones will continue in existence. So there are many in the legal community who believe that these clauses are entirely unnecessary. Nonetheless, I'm seeing more and more bills using them. I counted at least 125 in the 2025 session. There's pretty standardized language. It simply reads in two sentences. The first, the provisions of this act are severable. Second, that if any provision of this act or its application is held invalid, that invalidity shall not affect other provisions or applications that can be given effect without the invalid provision or application. The last item, the third main area, is seeing more and more bills contingent on future budget appropriations. More and more bills, again, are including what we generally deem to be contingent operative language, meaning those bills, even inactive, when enacted and become effective, that is, they're on the books officially, they can only be operative if there is funding made in a future state budget or some sort of future appropriation bill. In other words, the statute is in law, it's codified, but it's inoperative without funding being appropriated. I counted about 180 of those bills in the 2025 session. Generally, here again, they use some standard language. This chapter, this article, for example, shall become operative only upon an appropriation by the legislature for its purposes in the Annual Budget Act or in another statute. Now, we've certainly seen legislative drafting standards get updated in California on occasion. For example, the adoption of a concurrent resolution requiring our transition over to gender neutral drafting. But these three particular areas, again, I've just been seeing more and more commonly in introduced legislation. We'll have to see what the 2026 legislative session brings us.